Hi everyone, welcome to the TriEssence martial art channel, another episode of Internal in a Nutshell. So in the last episode of Internal in a Nutshell, we talked about why rooting is a lie, and you should watch it by now. If you don't, watch that one first. This is the follow-up video. But in a nutshell, rooting is a lie because there's no situation where you really need to stand very firmly and let somebody push you and resist that push. It serves no purpose in real life, right? No matter how good he's rooting, it doesn't help when I hit him in the face. And that's what people is going to do when you are in a fight, right? Fighting, or even if you do internal martial art, is not a tug of war or some kind of butting heads like the bulls and the bucks and the animals do. We don't do that, at least not anymore. So standing firmly on the ground and withstanding somebody's push is kind of pointless. Unless you're thinking maybe for takedown, but the reality is, even if you do root yourself, if a guy actually try to yank your leg and do single leg takedown, chances are you're not gonna survive that. So that again is not really practical. So the question then is, why do we have this misconception of wanting to root, right? In my last video I talked about rooting itself is pointless, but if you can have somebody who push you, and then not only do you root, you are able to push back to him, then that kind of helps, right? But some of the people don't understand why that helps. Like why is pushing back important rather than just standing still and letting the guy not able to push you? So here's the thing, we don't want people to push us, okay? So we're not going to go into a fight and let the guy push us on the chest and then we push them back. However, this kind of demonstration or testing, it shows a quality. It's a quality of a good structure. And the structure, while we do talk about connecting to the ground and having the body in the correct posture to receive the force, the idea is not to root, but just so that we can withstand more pressure than regularly untrained people. That's all there is to it. If you have ever fought somebody who is much heavier than you, like let's say you weigh 70 kilo and you find somebody else that weighs 90. I guess not everyone have done that in the past, but if you do, you will notice a thing, is that person will just push you over. Like whatever you try to do, he's gonna walk over you. And at that which point, you will probably feel very helpless. I mean, you can try to jump back and then try to sucker punch him on the face, and maybe if you hit him on the face, you might win the fight. But if you don't have any of those lucky shots, chances are you're gonna have an uphill battle. And it literally feels like you're walking uphill because he just has his weight overpowering your weight. And whatever you do, you kind of just gonna get shoved back as he comes forward and start punching you or pushing you, and you can't stop him. So that's why actually, one of the reasons, not all, but one of the reasons why in modern fighting contests you have weight division, because when somebody severely weighs over you, they have a better advantage. So in the same sense, in traditional internal martial art, when we are not trying to overweight the other person, we try to create a similar effect with a superior structure. So what that means is, if you don't understand structure, even though if you might throw good punches and proper mechanics and hit really hard, if a person is pushing you here and then you try to punch him, you'll feel that every time you try to punch, you're going to get pushed back. And in doing so, you're not grounded enough to throw a very solid punch, right? Which is why in some scenario, obviously, this doesn't work on really good fighters or professional, high-level boxers. But against like regular people, it sometimes works, if someone tries to throw your punch at you, just push him back, and his punch is gonna either miss or have very little power because he's distracted from the forces here, right? Which is why, if you actually fought people before, you'll notice that it's very uncomfortable while you're trying to hit somebody and that person is constantly engaging you and end up affecting your balance. It just makes it very hard to throw punches. So what is that supposed to mean? Well, you see, fighting is obviously a very chaotic thing, and there are usually two approaches to it. I mean, good approach, right? Not like the fake and bad approaches. There are two good approaches to it. One is that you want to fight with agility. So one of the good examples is boxing, right? We don't want to just butt a head in. I mean, obviously sometimes in the ring they kind of engage close range and they start trying to hit body shot and a hug. most of the time you want to kind of keep your distance and then play around in angles and then try to find the right opportunity to then throw punches. If you engage in that kind of combat, then this is not really an issue. However, in more street-like fighting, again, I'm not saying that boxing can't be used in street fight. Most of the time, when a good boxer engages in a street fight, he will just knock the guy out with 1 or 2 punches and end the fight. So it's actually very efficient. But if you're not like that level of boxing and you end up in a street fight, most of the time if you watch any street fight clips, it gets very messy. People will like start, like shoving each other around. People like do kind of things like this. And at that point, you realize that even if you know how to throw a punch, you can't, because everything is just pushing into each other. Obviously, at that time, you could back away, disconnect, and then find an opportunity to throw a good hook or a good cross and then try to knock the guy out. That's one solution. Another is basically like internal martial art, where they want the whole body to share the force that they generate, right? So instead of only focusing on the power going into the punch, they kind of want an overall structure. Which is why, for example, in Yi Quan, they talk about the 6 directional force: up, down, left, right, forward, and back. And why do they not only focus on throwing the punch, power going to the punch? It's because they don't only expect to receive resistance on the punch. They expect to receive resistance on the whole body. Wherever they touch the person, they're expecting resistance. So from Yi Quan, there's like you're saying that, when you're in a Hunyuan stance, anywhere the person touch you, it has to feel the same amount of internal structure. You can't only have structure on your hand or on your elbow or on one place. It needs to be evenly distributed. And there's actually one training, not one of the main trainings, but there is a training where a person will put this on your chest and you will learn to punch like that. So that not only do you have force on the arm, right? If I don't have overall power, it will just be like this. So you don't want that, but you also don't want to only resist here and not be able to punch. So you kind of have to synchronize it to do it together. So as the chest pushes forward, the punch goes forward too. So obviously when you're doing a fight, you're not expecting someone to push in the chest. And if somebody do push in the chest, you can just simply move that and then punch it. So that's not the real problem. But when you engage a fight in the internal martial arts style approach, such as Yi Quan, you don't really know what will happen. Okay, so the idea is that I wanna control his hand and then punch him. But occasionally, maybe that initial control didn't work, and then he ends up clashing into you, at which point you need to be able to maintain enough integrity of your structure to not get pushed over. And that's why you kind of want to remind yourself that even if you have force on your chest, you should be able to still do the punch. And obviously, that doesn't mean that you can use this method to repel any amount of force. But as long as you're able to move your body together, having power here and here, then you will do better than someone whose body, what we call, is not synchronized, where it's like kind of untrained or not trained in internal martial art mechanic. And should, in a case where they both kind of engage in, then you have a better chance of maintaining that structure and being able to push through while punching him. So that is the sole reason why structure is even a thing, and that's why just standing here and then somebody push and sink down to the ground is not actually efficient. Rather, you have to be able to withstand the force and still step forward. That's more important. And the only structure you ever need is that so that when you charging into a guy, if you meet resistance, you don't immediately get pushed back. And that obviously, if we talk about Yi Quan, it doesn't always happen to the chest, right? I could come in and then hit contact on my arm, and you can't get pushed in like this, right? But I'm often trying to punch him, but the force don't need to be going this way, going that way, going backwards, and all together. And obviously, if you learn to a higher level, you want to always try to move around and not just go in.
but the initial quality of being able to resist somebody's force is still important. You kind of have to almost imagine each one is like you're walking in like a tank. Wherever he touches you, you kind of just ignore through your sheer overall structure. Now, Tai Chi is a bit different. They don't want to engage in like a tank, but still this condition of the proper routine, right? Not the sinking to the ground, low stance, you can't push me routine, but this type of routine is still important because only difference between Tai Chi and Yiquan is that we don't want to forcefully push in like a tank. We kind of push in and then we dissipate that force and then we send in another force rather than just kind of go in head on. So, but virtually it kind of looks similar. I'll still go in and see this force, except we're going to lose it and then generate another force. But to do that, I still need to have that quality of rooting in the different sense. Because if you can't do when somebody pushing your chest and take a step forward, then you can't having somebody who are trying to stop you arm, dissipate that force, generate another force and step forward. So that principle is based on the same quality understanding of the mechanic. So that's the only reason why having somebody push your chest and being able to resist the spread of force and moving forward is even a thing in internal martial art. Not for any other reason. Being able to stand still and not let somebody push you serves no purpose in fighting. People are going to aim for your face. Okay, so that's something that you have to remember. And any other internal martial art style is pretty similar. Like we don't try to move around and evade as much as pretty much just going in with better structure and take over the pace of the combat from the get-go. The only exception maybe is Wushin Tongbei, which doesn't have like a stable structure, so to speak. So we don't actually engage and get somebody push on us and then repel that force back. Instead, we just kind of go in like this and we whack people really hard and hit them. Which is why in Wushin Tongbei we don't have the testing on the chest. However, being able to do this practice and make you understand the connection between the force into your body and the force that comes back out still helps because it teaches you a better awareness of your spine, so when you actually do punches and other moves, your body will be better synchronized. So that's like a side benefit of being able to do the proper structural resistance or rooting. So either you want to overpower an opponent in a fight, or at least it helps you understand the optimal body structure, because how force comes in is how an opposing force can generate it outwards. If your structure is incomplete, then you can't generate power with your whole body in the ideal mechanical manner. So that's like a side reason why someone would want to test and practice an ability to be able to withstand a certain amount of force into the body. But all in all, no matter what the reason is and how you do it, just simply being able to stand still and not being pushed over is not good enough. When you see somebody demonstrating that, just walk up to him and ask, what would you do if I hit you in the face? And it probably wouldn't end well for your conversation, but at least you know that person is talking trash. Alright, so hopefully this video has made sense to you, and you better understand now why traditionally they even have a thing about checking whether you can resist a force and push back that force. And as always, right, I always tell you that everything you do or learn or see in Chinese martial arts, you have to use logic and ask the question why. Does it make logical sense? Does it make practical sense? Anything that doesn't make practical sense, either you don't yet understand the true purpose of it, or whatever they're showing you or telling you is rubbish, right? And without asking that question, you might be fake nonsense for 5-10 years without realizing you are wasting your time. So as always, anything you do, think about logically and think about it from a practical point of view, and you will be scammed far less. Alright, hope this video made sense to you and you enjoyed it. If you do enjoy it, subscribe on my YouTube channel, and if you can support me on Patreon, that would be greatly appreciated. As always, a shout out to all my Patreon supporters. Thank you guys so much for supporting me. And if you have any questions on current content or suggestions for future content, always feel free to message me. I'll get back to you whenever I can. And on Patreon, I have a whole list of exclusive videos, predominantly on the in-depth analysis of 4 fundamental forces, but also videos on how to apply the 4 forces to each one. as well as on other video where I answer individual questions from various supporters. They're definitely worth checking out if you have interest in understanding internal mechanics using the laws of physics rather than some metaphysical woo-woo nonsense. Lastly, I'd like to remind everyone that we're still in a pandemic, so wear your mask, sanitize your hand, keep your social distance when you can, stay safe, stay healthy. Thanks for watching TriEssence Martial Art channel, and I'll see you next time.